Okay, next up we have a panel on interoperability. Is it achievable and how? So come on up. We've got Phil Mesnier is principal engineer and partner and blockchain practice lead at Object Computing. Travis Walker is co-founder at ARK. Come on up onto the stage. David Moss is founder and CEO at StrongBlock. Simon Lapsher is Liquality co-founder at Consensus. Luke Stokes is Chief Decentralization Officer at DAPEX. Thanks so much, gentlemen.
Am I on?
Well, I guess I'll use this one then. Good morning, everyone. Interoperability. Well, what the heck does that mean? We're going to talk about it in our 20 minutes here. That apparently now is 15 minutes. But let's do quick introductions. Basically, just talk about what you're doing, who you are, where you work, and then we'll go around and dive into it a little bit. Phil, if you want to get started.
Sure. So, like she said, I'm Phil Mesnier. I'm a partner at Object Computing Incorporated. My reason for being here is I was part of the development team that brought EOS to existence, and I worked on the networking, and that's going to be my focus of this talk.
Oh, there's an extra.
Hey, I'm Simon Lapsher. I'm the co-founder of Liquality, and so we do cross-chain financial applications. So we've built a protocol for cross-chain development, interoperability of value exchange. And then we're building products on top of it, like a disintermediated cross-chain exchange between Bitcoin and Ethereum, atomic loans between Bitcoin and stablecoins, and other disintermediated products.
My name is Luke Stokes. I work on a lot of different projects. Actually, I'm a block producer with EOS DAC on the EOS chain, also a block producer on Steam, working with Rockpeers to do an EOS Foundation, and then also, of course, the Chief Decentralization Officer for DAPEX, which is building the FIO protocol. It's a foundation for inter-wallet operability, which we think is going to solve a lot of these challenges we're facing in this space. I'm very, very excited about that. Looking forward to talking about it.
I'm Travis Walker. I'm co-founder of ARK. ARK, we give everyone the ability to create their own blockchain and make it interoperable with everything. Absolutely everything. We want everyone to have their own blockchain.
Awesome, good stuff. So interoperability, Phil, what does that mean to you when we say interoperability?
So I look at this from a network perspective and consider the protocols. And what I see as most important is interface level interoperability. So basically from a smart contract perspective, again, because I'm an EOS guy, I looked at the smart contracts, and all they have are a language-independent interface that's generated for the smart contract that describes how the data goes in, what data comes out, what tables are stored, and behind that is an implementation. And I think that implementation can be done by any blockchain as long as we have a common interface language and allow for contracts on any other, make sure that the contracts can talk to each other, because I see that's where the real interoperability is.
Okay, so from a contract perspective, that's where you're looking at it.
Right.
What about you, Simon?
Yeah, so we look at it more from the value exchange aspect, and so specifically focus on financial applications for now. And when we think about interoperability, we think about how do we find a common language between the different chains and not add components. So instead of putting components in the middle and putting more security gaps and basically going to the lowest common denominator, we think about how do we get these chains to talk the same language.
That makes a lot of sense. What about you, Luke?
First, I guess I should say Happy Halloween to explain my little Jedi outfit here. A little disappointed.
We're all dressed up. You're the one that looks normal.
Costumes in the crowd, but I think it's actually the user experience layer that is really important for this. For example, you don't have to download a new browser when you go to a new website. HTTP and these different protocols, they just work. And the internet was around for about 10 years before a lot of people started using it, because we didn't have something like HTTP. It was there were no standards. It was kind of all over the place. And I feel like we're in that same space with the blockchain community. It's hard to use cryptocurrency. It's too hard. It's too difficult. It's too frustrating. Public addresses, routing information, these kind of things are inconsistent across all these different blockchains. And so what we're trying to do with FIO is through creating a DAO model where it's actually owned and operated by the community of stakeholders in it. It's going to come across all the different silos we see in the space, and it's going to be based on the user experience. So it's going to be the wallets, exchanges, payment gateways. Going to have a seamless experience to do requests for send and different things like that. So for me, interoperability is talking to all these chains with a consistent user experience.
So right there, you have 3 different definitions already. Travis, your definition.
Well, I agree with what you said. There is a huge UI problem with it all, but it doesn't have to be based on just one protocol. Like this is where the wallets come into play, interoperable wallets, whatever. They talk to other chains, but you don't have to do that. As we proved it with ARK back in 2017, is you could have like listener nodes that could be trustless using a contract-based listener node itself, and it could talk to different protocols. But it's the UI thing that people don't understand yet.
Yeah, for sure. So we're working out a lot of things on interoperability in the background, the things that people don't see, but the parts that they need to see right now are confusing and difficult. So let's come down this other direction. So you're talking ARK, you're talking about your use case. You talked about interoperability, making things interoperable. What are you specifically working on? What is something that you guys are really proud of or that you're excited about that you're doing in ARK?
We're pretty proud of, we created the ARK deployer, which is, it gives everyone the ability to just point, click, go through a UI, create your own token, your own blockchain, your own amount of nodes, your own transactions per second. Make it all very, very intuitive. It's very, very simple, easy to follow. It usually takes about 20 to 30 minutes to actually figure it out if you have a basic understanding of how to spin up a VPS.
And on the interoperability side, then how does that work for your
on the
customers?
interoperability side, that is coming with the with our 3.0 BFT. We're thinking Tendermint-ish on the background. We're very similar where it comes to like where Cosmos is the hub. We're the same way, but we like to create everyone's blockchain for them, and we want them to have the ability to actually use like the listener nodes or anything like that to actually talk to Bitcoin as well if they need to.
So they're not islands. You can create it, then have listener nodes, so you can have portals or open up a port to another chain.
You can have a marketplace where everyone can have a DEX and they can all be in their own ARK hub.
That's cool.
But you can also at the same time use the listener nodes and talk to other protocols.
That's a really cool idea. So Luke, what about you? What's a good use case that you've been working on that kind of defines interoperability for you that you're excited about?
Definitely, again, it's just implementing the FIO protocol and getting it accepted by the community. So we've already got, you probably heard Binance led our round of funding that we closed a few months back, and we've got a number of great wallets, Trust Wallet, Edge Wallet, Bitcoin.com, a number of them that have recognized we do need this standard. We need this simple interface. We need to abstract public addresses away because they're too confusing and they stress people out when they're figuring out, is that the right hash I'm supposed to be sending crypto to? It's got to be as easy as PayPal or Venmo. It's got to be easier even. And also too, when I think about, I've been in the space for almost 7 years now, it's like I've never had crypto sent to me that I didn't expect. It's always started with a request. So the functionality of request for send, the ability to do subscriptions, multi-signature routing, lots of different cool stuff that a lot of chains know they need to build or want to build someday. And now we're just saying, look, if you don't have to touch your chain, you don't have to change your chain. We're at the wallet layer, the interface layer. Yeah. So therefore, you can just skip that whole part of development, all that usability layer that you want to add to it, and you can focus on what you do best, which is your core competency for your blockchain. And I think that approach is really exciting to me because then people can, again, it's one of the first times I see in the whole space where the community can come together and say, we have a reason to work together outside of our silos for the first time. We can come together and build a standard for our industry. And if it's really owned and operated by the community in a true DAO fashion, there's not going to be like one group of people who say, sweet, now we get to control everything because we control the standard. That's what we obviously want to avoid. So just those wallets being able to work in a seamless way, I think is really important.
So I agree with that problem, 100%. If I understand the FIO protocol correctly, what you're doing is you're creating a separate blockchain that is acting as the translator between the different wallets and the different chains.
Well, the important thing is it doesn't actually talk to the other blockchain, the blockchain itself. So it's not like Phil's talking about or like you're discussing where it's just in the interface layer. So you have a request, you do a lookup, and then it then swaps over to the natural lookup of a normal Bitcoin send in the wallet at that point. But you just don't actually have to see the address.
The process of the transaction, whether it is at the interface layer or at the transaction layer. You're putting another blockchain in the middle, right? So
No, I actually wouldn't say in the middle. It's more so that
in the process, it's
yeah,
in
just
the process.
like Ethereum NS, for example, you look it up on Ethereum's blockchain, you would look up this data securely on this
So
field
it's
blockchain.
like, so it's almost like DNS.
Yeah, but it's similar, but it's more about workflow.
Yeah, got
Yeah.
it. Okay, well, Simon.
Yeah, I just want to say I get it. I'm concerned that you kind of like when you involve that, you go to the lowest common denominator in security, and so I agree it has to be as easy as PayPal, but it also has to be incredibly secure. And I worry about introducing things that could be potentially lead to cartels and lead to
There are cartels already.
takeovers. Not in FIO, no.
Well, anyway, Simon, why don't you
Yeah.
give us some of your best use case or the thing you're excited about?
Yeah, so we're working, like I said, in financial application interoperability. And so, for example, a project that's building on top of Liquality is called Atomic Loans, and they're providing Bitcoin to stablecoins on Ethereum loans. And so, for example, for miners on Bitcoin that want working capital out of their mined Bitcoins, they can do so and basically lend out basically borrow stable coins from their Bitcoin, which I think is an excellent use case that is applicable today. And they launched on mainnet last week, so I think
wow! So the interoperability part just is really right there, right now, something that people can use.
That's exactly right.
That's great. Phil, what about you?
Yeah, so OCI is a consultancy, so we work with a lot of different companies. And what we see that's really fascinating is we start with the EOS framework and change it a little bit and customize it. You end up with a new blockchain with different characteristics, but it has the same interface. So it could, in principle, like what Luke was saying, you could have multiple blockchains that are all able to communicate with the same protocol, and that's what we're working with, and partnering with some companies like what you're familiar with.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's part of what we're looking at here is that we're kind of in an interesting time where there are so many different protocols out there, 2,600 different plus coins. Most of those projects have failed, and the ones that have survived have small audiences, or their tokens are pretty much just SH coins. And so then making the things that are going to work, it's going to be everybody talking nicely with each other. I talked yesterday in one of my panels about Tower of Babel. We're kind of at that point where there's so many different things going on. So to me, interoperability means we're going to start figuring out ways to all get along, because if we don't, then if you don't get adopted, then you're going to get left behind. And so if you can not be necessarily adopted, but you can be compatible, at least at the start there.
I think it's a really huge point to mention that all the value in this space is basically shared storytelling. It's this network effect of the more people we connect to using it, the more valuable it becomes, because more people give belief and time and attention to it. So I completely agree that the siloed nature of what we started with is not where we're going. And I think any attempts, whether it's on the lowest level, whether it's a system to get these blockchains talking to each other, or whether it's at the highest level at the user interface, any opportunity to say, all of these systems, whatever value they are creating individually, can be brought into the larger network effect of the whole system.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we want to try to get to here. So again, we don't have a tremendous amount of time. None of the panels do, and I like that because it does give you the idea of keeping your ideas short and really being concise. So Travis, where do you see this going now? You have some things that you talked about that are coming out. You've got 3.0 version, but if we're going ahead 3 years, let's just jump ahead. 3 years is, let me say 2 years, because look what happened in the last 2 years. My gosh,
that's like 10 years in real life.
Yeah. Basically, we used to say at Oracle, it was every quarter was 1 year on the outside, and in blockchain, every month is 1 year on the outside. It's pretty much been like that. Where do you see things going in the next 2 years? What does it look like 2 years out? What do you see?
That's difficult. I mean, look back.
That's too far in advance. But again, where are you heading? If you were
right now, we're speaking of interoperability. Like, we are already there. We're right in the stages where it's happening. It's being tested all over the place. Everyone's going to be adopting it. And you see other coins, other technologies actually figuring out how to interoperate with blockchain technologies. It's here. It's just who's going to step up and be the catalyst to make it, nationwide or worldwide.
So you're saying 2 years from now, some catalytic event will happen.
Tomorrow,
and
Home
everybody's
Depot
adopted
could
it.
spin up and use the ARK deployer tomorrow and create their own inventory chain, and then use the ARK deployer as well to create their own Home Depot token, and they could talk to each other. That could be the catalyst tomorrow. It could be anything like that.
Okay, great. Luke, what about you?
I just think it's got to be easy. I mean, your grandma and your grandpa have to be able to use it. I'm really excited about DAX and DAOs and all these kind of things.
Not necessarily, but
I think if we're going to have the mass adoption I got in this space because I see it as a tool for freedom to increase human well-being and do those global nonviolent consensus. These are beautiful, amazing things. And if we're going to have billions and billions of people using it, it just has to be easy. So for me, it's just that ease of use is going to be what is going to be the focus in the next
so
couple
2 years
It's
from
gonna
now,
super
it'll be
easy.
easier to use. You'll be able to use your smartphone and be able to do all the stuff that right now is just cryptic as heck.
No more logins and passwords either. You bring your identity, your reputation, everything with you from the chain, and you log in.
A whole other wonderful discussion about, is your phone your identity? If you lose your phone, do you exist anymore? If a tree falls in the forest. Anyway, Simon.
Yeah, I look forward to that, absolutely, but I think it's going to take longer because I think what's going to happen is that, people are going to take shortcuts, and so creating these languages in ways that compromise security. And so I think what we're going to see, things will get better in the short term, but then in the medium term, you might start seeing some of these exploits, like, for example, the forks of Bitcoin that, end up with less hash, and so end up being 51% attackable. And so you're going to see those types of security flaws pop up. And when you do, there's going to be a clear need, for these common languages that are native to the chains themselves.
Well, interestingly, that almost describes what went on with the internet, right? As the internet kind of got rushed out and Kubernetes was being built at MIT and there's all these other things going on, didn't actually make it into the internet, and so it's insecure as heck, which is blockchain is theoretically supposed to solve. So Phil, what about you?
Well, the time's out, but I would say...
No, go for it.
So in 2 years, what I think we're going to see are thousands of blockchains all able to talk at some common layer, whether that's low level or mid level or user level, but that it's all going to be, we're not going to talk about blockchain, Bitcoin or Ethereum or EOS or Hyperledger. We're just going to be talking about our wallets and capabilities and how to get contracts to do whatever we need to do.
That's great. And so we started off with, I guess, a little bit less time on the clock, so we're going to finish up. But I really appreciate all of you being here. This is obviously a much bigger discussion, and I think that's what a lot of these things, these 20-minute sessions have been about, is getting people excited about these things and then breaking out and having other discussions. We're all available to talk. You can all reach all of us. I think all of us are pretty reachable on various media things to talk about these things and help out. But I really appreciate Phil, Simon, Luke, and Travis that you were here today to talk about this, and thank you all.
Thanks for having us.